This is BoCo from Thomas & Friends, and he's kind of expensive. So I made my own. I'm Geoh, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So in all honesty, I do have BoCo. In fact, I have multiple BoCos. But I felt really inspired to make my own version of him after learning the hidden meaning behind his name. BoCo is a play on the term kobo, which refers to a locomotive chassis with 6 driven wheels at its front and 4 unpowered ones at the rear, which BoCo has. Ironically, none of his wooden railway models have this feature, probably down to the fact that up until the 2010s, no wooden trains actually existed that had more than 8 wheels and were bogied. So, let's make one. I started by 3D modeling his chassis block. After, the body was modeled around it, which was simply a large rectangle with a curve at the top. Without the bogies, the model was 2.7 centimeters tall and 15 centimeters long. One detail I knew I wanted to include was BoCo's red buffer beam, another key feature left out of the wooden railway model. The red always felt like such a nice complementary color to the green body, and he kind of feels naked without it.
Good grief, he's naked!
At first I played around with the idea of just adding a red stripe under his face, but that just made him look stumpy. But then I came to the realization I could just have the buffer beam extend down from the body, which would A, make him look taller, and B, be the mounting points for the magnets. This was an exciting development, and I immediately ran to test print him. I spliced the model in half so each side could print flat, as well as making the body hollow to save on filament. And this was the result. The body was long, which I really liked, and the only issue was the circular piece where the magnet was to go was just a little too small. I went back to the drawing board and remodeled the magnet portion to be larger. It was sent again to the printer when this happened. Word of note, don't forget to add adhesive to the bed before printing. Okay, so if this was a hit era episode, we've hit 1 out of the 3 strikes so far. Since I already modeled him as 2 parts and what was printed technically wasn't messed up, I extended the next half I'd have to print so he'd be the correct length, and I could salvage what was done. After making sure that the bed had the adhesive this time and a few hours passing, it was done. The next step would be gluing the 2 halves together, but I realized something luckily before I went any further. The mounting points for the magnets was the correct size this time, but they'd essentially just be extruding out from the model, which before then I of course didn't consider how awkward that would end up looking, so ding ding, we have the second strike! At first I thought I'd just drill a hole in the mount and slip the magnet inside, but after an attempt was made I concluded it was too messy of an operation, and more importantly, wouldn't work. So I sawed them off the body and modeled a new pair, and after a test print, I found the magnet fit in perfectly. So they were glued to each end of the model, and shortly after, the 2 halves were glued together too. Then my BFF wood filler was added to all the seams for a smooth surface. After drying, the body went through multiple coats of filler primer and sanding with multiple grits of sandpaper. BoCo's curved roof was a challenge to spray the filler on, as it would just run down the sides, but after 3 passes it was as good as it was going to get. For painting, I wanted a green that was close to the shade used on his TV series model, but not as bright and saturated as the leaf green on the toy. I finally got this perfect color by combining a base green with different shades of blue and yellow. Once it was mixed to perfection, it took about 3 coats to get the model totally covered. So this project was really exciting for me because I find it so satisfying when characters get their proper wheel arrangement. Don't get me wrong, I love the basic TWR aesthetic, but any character that has 8 wheels looks like this to me. Let me know down in the comments what wooden railway character you think deserves a proper wheel arrangement mod. I think Edward's next in my opinion. Next, I masked off everything on the model except for the buffer beams and took it outside for a coat of Tamiya Italian red. I stupidly realized after the first weirdly colored coat that I forgot to prime it with a gray first, which I then proceeded with and followed with a final coat of red. And the satisfaction of removing the masking tape. As the colors of the model were basically finalized, I moved on to decals. I prepared to make 6 in total, one for the front, back, left and right sides of the body, roof and chassis block. I used a variety of reference photos for BoCo, mainly the ruler shots, but specifically looked at other toys to see how they interpreted the details themselves. The main aesthetics were also heavily inspired by the 2007 re-release of Daisy, which is actually one of my favorite wooden railway models. Specifically, that inspiration manifested itself into the blue windows that makes the model a little more vibrant. That Daisy was actually re-released alongside of All Characters Derek. You'd think BoCo would have been a shoo-in rather than a one-time appearing nothing burger of a character, but I guess if they ended up doing BoCo then I probably wouldn't be doing this now. The hardest part was trying to design the curved windows for BoCo's front and back. I think I got it looking nice enough in the end. Maybe it's about time I graduated from Paint 3D and started making these in Photoshop or GIMP. Once they were finalized and sized correctly, I printed them out. As usual, all my decals are printed on letter printer paper, and I'm using a standard glue stick to apply them on. Applying them went well, but I didn't realize how difficult the roof was going to be, specifically making sure it was on straight, and it was actually adhering to the body. Something I completely neglected to mention was taking on the face. Not too long ago, user Star Switcher sent some broken Bandai text toys to my PO box, which included BoCo among other characters. Most of these were broken and damaged in some capacity, and I decided I'd use BoCo for this custom as the face was basically the perfect size. Yes, I know it's a little wasteful to use just the face out of an entire engine, but since I had no other need for the toy, I decided it was okay. The face was held in via 3 tabs at the bottom and top, which I had to cut so it could sit flat. As you can tell, the face was slightly sun-faded, and sun-faded plastic usually becomes very brittle, so I had to cut this with the utmost care and caution. Son of a bitch! After some emergency face surgery, I filled the corners and top with wood filler. Milliput probably would have been the ideal option in this situation, but I didn't have any when this happened. The area was carefully sanded and I took it out for a very light coat of filler primer, along with some other 3D printed faces that needed to be filled as well. There's something so satisfying about seeing something in that primer gray color. And here's the face ready to be painted. To start, I went in with my classic weapons of choice for faces, Dove Gray and Titanium White from Folk Art. I start with as many thin coats of the gray as possible, and then add the whites of the eyes and mouth. Clean up any overpainting with the gray again. And then add pupils and eyebrows with black. When I get to this part, I pivot to a weaker dollar store black acrylic as it's easier to scrape away and correct errors if they happen. And in my case, they usually do.
You're making me giddy.
My big debate for the face was whether to paint the mouth in with black or leave it white. I decided to make it white as I felt the teeth showing looked better to the open mouth option. And I'm glad I did. Look at those pearly whites. One coat of matte Mod Podge later, and it was done. BoCo's wheels ended up being the smoothest part of the project. I get asked a lot about painting wheels, and the best thing I can suggest, like I did here, is to give them a good primer coat on the front and back sides, so the paint has something to stick to. Just maybe don't do it at 9 PM like I did. After priming, I coated both sides with a black spray paint and a finishing coat of Krylon chalky finish. I usually finish my wheels with a gloss coat, but the chalky finish gives them an identical look to standard wooden railway wheels, so I went with that. The model at this point was finished besides a coat of gloss on the main body, which brings us to strike 3. Earlier I mentioned it was hard spraying BoCo with the filler primer because of his extremely curved top. When it came to spray with the gloss, my mind completely glossed over this, and the finish just seeped down the side, creating huge gross blotches on both sides. I had to remove the decals, sand the finish, reprint the decals, and respray the model a total of 3 times because it just kept happening. I cannot stress how irritating and painful it was prying off the decals. It felt like the project would never end. What did end fast and painless was the chassis blocks that were filled, sanded, and painted black. Who would have guessed the most simple part of the project would go so smoothly? And lastly was adding BoCo's name to the chassis, aka the christening of the model. And at that point it was time for the final assembly. And now, let's get to the reveal.
This engine is a Metropolitan Vickers Diesel Electric Type 2. Call me BoCo. BoCo, my dear engine, save me.
And here's my neo-accurate BoCo. And I have to say, after everything, I'm kinda mixed on him.
What?
Okay, hold on, let me explain again. I am proud of what I've been able to do with him and the final output, but he has flaws. BoCo is fine on his own, but when you place it beside literally any engine, he looks so short. And it's all thanks to the deep curve in the roof. It kind of makes sense why they didn't curve the roof so much on the original wooden model, because I'm sure the shorter than he actually is effect would happen here too. I'm kicking myself because if I only made him like half a centimeter taller, he'd look so much better. So was this all a waste of valuable time?
This is a complete waste of valuable time.
No. BoCo didn't turn out perfect, but I think what I was able to achieve as far as the magnet design, accurate chassis, and overall design, I think was worth it. And if I ever do decide to make a larger one, I know it'll work out thanks to this prototype. I guess it goes to show that not all projects will go to plan, and even if something fails, you can still find something to be proud of. If you made it this far, let me know what you think of BoCo in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing as it really helps me out. And if you want to go one step further, check out my Linktree where you can follow my Instagram, find my Ko-Fi, and find other accounts. Any and all support helps. But to end off, I've been Geoh, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.